I couldn't believe my ears when my sister told me I wasn't welcome at her wedding. To make matters worse, my own mom sided with her, telling me to just get over it for the sake of the family. They thought they held all the power, completely clueless about the secret I was hiding. See, they booked the most exclusive spot in town, but they didn't know my name was on the deed. I wasn't just a scorned sister, I was the owner. I picked up my phone to make one simple call, and I knew her big day was about to change forever. The conversation had turned toxic faster than I expected. I grabbed my jacket from the rack and didn't bother saying goodbye to anyone inside. My hand gripped the cold brass handle, and I pulled the heavy oak door open with urgency. The satisfying slam that followed echoed down the quiet suburban street. It was the only way to express the anger boiling inside me without screaming. I stood on the welcome mat for a moment, letting the silence wash over me. I stepped off the porch and moved quickly toward the street where my sedan was parked. Behind me, the front door creaked open again, breaking the brief moment of peace. My mother stood there, her voice raising in pitch as she yelled something about selfishness and family duty. I didn't stop to listen to the specific words she was throwing at my back. Her opinion had lost its value the moment she told me I didn't matter. Reaching my car felt like reaching a sanctuary. I fumbled with my keys for a second before the lock finally clicked open. The leather strap of my handbag caught on my sleeve, adding to my frustration. I yanked it free and tossed the bag onto the passenger seat harder than I intended. It slid across the upholstery and hit the far door with a thud. I just needed to get behind the wheel and put distance between us. Once inside, I leaned across the center console to open the glove compartment. Buried under the vehicle registration and old receipts lay the document I had been saving for this exact moment. I pulled the folded paper out and smoothed it against the steering wheel. This piece of paper was the only leverage I had left against them. It was time to remind everyone who actually held the cards in this situation. The ink on the bottom of the page was clear and legally binding. My sister had signed her name right next to the clause regarding cancellation policies. She obviously hadn't read the fine print or checked who the managing partner of the venue was. I stared at her looping handwriting one last time before grabbing my smartphone. My knuckles turned white as I squeezed the device, preparing to make the move they never saw coming. I turned the key, and the engine hummed to life, vibrating through the seat. Without checking the rearview mirror for my mother on the porch, I shifted into drive. The tires crunched over the gravel at the end of the driveway as I merged onto the main road. The familiar house disappeared from my peripheral vision as I accelerated. Leaving that place felt less like running away and more like moving toward a necessary conclusion. The mid-afternoon traffic was dense, but I wove through the lanes with focus. Every red light felt like an unnecessary delay in my timeline. Buildings grew taller and crowds thicker as I approached the city center. Eventually, the congestion eased as I turned toward the historic district on the outskirts. This area was known for its renovated warehouses and high-end event spaces. I knew exactly which street led to the location of the impending disaster. I bypassed the main entrance and circled around the block to a side street. There was an empty gravel lot used for overflow parking that sat directly across from the venue. I killed the engine and positioned the car so I could see the front gates clearly. From this vantage point, I could watch everything unfold without being immediately spotted. It was the perfect spot to witness the consequences of their betrayal. Activity at the venue was already in full swing. Several large white vans with the catering company's logo backed up to the service entrance. Staff members in black uniforms hurried back and forth, carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres and crates of champagne. They were setting up for a celebration that was supposed to be the highlight of Emily's life. Watching them work so hard for an event that wouldn't happen gave me a strange sense of satisfaction. My chest felt tight, so I inhaled deeply to steady my racing heart. The screen of my phone was still lit up in my hand. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the entry labeled Venue Management. This wasn't a social call or a simple inquiry about the schedule. I pressed the call button and listened to the dial tone, knowing there was no turning back now. The phone rang twice before a professional voice answered on the other end. I skipped the pleasantries and got straight to the point of my call. I stated my name clearly and provided the specific ownership code associated with the building. The manager's tone shifted instantly from polite customer service to attentive deference. He hadn't expected to hear from the silent partner on a busy Saturday afternoon. Silence filled the line as the manager typed rapidly on a keyboard in the background. He needed to verify my claim before taking any drastic actions. I waited patiently, listening to the faint clicks as he accessed the secure files. He pulled up the deed and the operating agreement on his screen. It only took a moment for him to see my name listed as the primary stakeholder. The manager cleared his throat and began to outline the standard procedures. He detailed the security measures and the refund policies for a same-day cancellation. I listened to every word without interrupting, ensuring I understood the logistics. He sounded nervous, likely calculating the potential fallout from such a sudden decision. But he was merely an employee, and he had to follow the directives of the owner. The most important piece of information came next. He read the clause that gave me absolute authority over the premises. As the owner, I could revoke the usage rights of the venue at any time for any reason. He confirmed that I had the legal power to terminate any event contract without prior notice. The contract my sister signed included this specific stipulation. My control over the situation was absolute and undeniable. A grim smile appeared on my face as he finished his explanation. I thanked him for his thoroughness and professional handling of the inquiry. However, I didn't tell him to pull the plug just yet. I instructed him to keep the security team on standby and wait for my signal. I wanted to time this perfectly for maximum impact. Cars started lining up at the valet station in front of the building. Men in expensive suits and women in colorful gowns stepped out onto the sidewalk. Small groups formed near the entrance, chatting and checking their watches. The anticipation in the air was visible even from across the street. They were all ready to celebrate, completely unaware that the party was already over. A long stretch limousine pulled up to the curb, drawing everyone's attention. The driver opened the rear door, and a cloud of white fabric emerged first. Emily stepped onto the pavement, looking radiant in her custom-designed wedding gown. She beamed at the crowd, soaking in the admiration of her friends and family. It was the moment she had been dreaming about for years. The bridesmaids surrounded Emily, adjusting her train and fixing her veil. They moved toward the large stone fountain near the entrance for a photo opportunity. Emily threw her head back in laughter, posing perfectly for the photographer. She looked entirely carefree, confident that everything was going exactly to plan. Seeing her so happy while she excluded me from her life hardened my resolve. I had seen enough from the sidelines. I shifted the car back into drive and pulled out of the vacant lot. The short drive across the street felt like crossing a battle line. I pulled up right next to the main gate, blocking the entrance for the next arriving car. Several guests turned to look at my vehicle with confusion. It was impossible to ignore my presence now. I lowered the driver's side window as the security guard approached. He looked annoyed, likely preparing to tell me to move along. I recognized him from the staff roster, but he didn't know who I was yet. I waved him closer, maintaining a calm and authoritative demeanor. He hesitated but walked over to the door. It was time to execute the final step of my plan. The guard leaned down, and I handed him the document with my signature. I told him to radio the manager immediately to confirm the order. I ordered the immediate cancellation of the wedding. My sister and guests were barred from entering, turning her dream day into a chaotic disaster in the parking lot. His eyes widened as he read the paper, realizing the gravity of the instruction. The head guard spoke into his earpiece and motioned sharply to his team. 4 large men in dark blazers stepped away from the valet stand. They moved quickly to block the double doors of the venue. A physical barrier formed between the guests and the reception hall. The chatter among the crowd died down as confusion began to spread. No one understood why the doors were suddenly closed. People tried to move forward, but the guards held their ground firmly. The manager emerged from inside and began speaking to the confused guests. Shouts of disbelief erupted as the news rippled through the crowd. My sister stood near the fountain, her face twisting from joy to absolute horror. The beautiful scene dissolved into an angry mob confined to the pavement. Emily stormed toward the security line, her dress dragging on the dirty concrete. She screamed at the men, demanding to be let into her own wedding. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her professional makeup. I watched her melt down for a fleeting second before pressing the button on my door. The window slid up, sealing out the noise of her tantrums. I turned the steering wheel and navigated around the stalled limousine. In my rearview mirror, I saw guests pulling out their phones and rushing toward the valet stand. The perfect day had been completely dismantled in a matter of minutes. I merged back into traffic, leaving the chaos behind me for good. Driving away, I finally felt the peace that my family had denied me for so long.